Hi, my name is Rod Khleif, and I'm the host of the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. And every week I interview multifamily rock stars, and we talk about how they've built incredible wealth for themselves and their families through multifamily properties. So hit the like and subscribe buttons to get notified every Monday when a new episode comes out. Let's get to it. Welcome to another edition of How to Build a Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Khleif, and I'm thrilled you're here. And listen up, I know you're going to get tremendous value from the gentleman we're interviewing today. His name is Brent Sprenkle, and Brent has been a commercial real estate broker in the multifamily space for a very long time. He's worked with Berkadia, Sperry Van Ness, two of the largest outfits in the country, and was one of the Berkadia's top 10 brokers for over 6 years. He's been involved in over $1 billion worth of transactions. So we're really going to get into the nitty gritty today. Welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, Rod, great to be here. Very exciting for me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, one of the things that new people, well, actually, you know what, forget that. Let's not go right into it. Talk a little bit about your background with a little more detail. I apologize. I was going to get right into questions, but yeah, if you could just give us a little background, a little more background.
Well, the background on me essentially is I'm originally from Pennsylvania, went to school to be an engineer. After I graduated, I got moved to Los Angeles to work for Howard Hughes Aircraft, and I was working on building DirecTV satellites. So I did that for 2.5 years, and it sounds super interesting, but in reality, it was really boring. And it turns out I wasn't a very good engineer, wound up getting laid off, and sat there scratching my head saying, what can I do now? I don't want to be an engineer anymore. I don't want to be an employee. Is there a better career path for me? A friend of mine had bought a few apartment buildings. Of course, he had money. I had none, so I couldn't go out and be a principal at that point, or at least I didn't know how to. And he just said, you should be a broker. Brokers to sell apartments make a ton of money, and there's no barrier to entry. And as long as you're willing to work hard, you could do well. So looked in the LA Times, saw, some help wanted ads, showed up, and they basically said, can you get a real estate license? Do you have a car? Are you willing to work for free? And I said, yes to all three of them. And they said, you're hired. So 20 years later, here I am still doing brokerage. I primarily just sell apartment buildings in Los Angeles County. We do small deals. We do very, very large deals. And it's been very lucrative. And on the way, I've managed to buy a building a year and try to build up a small portfolio as sort of my exit strategy and my way to segue into the next part of my career.
Love it. Love it. Now, I know you wrote a book too, which we'll talk about here in a minute, but let's dig into some questions that I came up with that I think will help a lot of the newer investors, the ones that already have a few hundred doors. It may not be as applicable to them, but maybe as well, because we're going to ask what irritates you with buyers as well. So I'm anxious to hear some of those stories, but I want to talk about building relationships as a newbie with a broker, because of course we're in one of the hottest markets we've ever been in with the cost of capital right now. And it's likely to remain that way, definitely in the short term. So, what suggestions would you have to someone who's maybe gone to one of my boot camps? They've learned the business at a higher level. They're drilling down. Even someone in my coaching program, for example, that's getting more and more into the business. What recommendations would you have to them around building a relationship with someone like yourself?
So that's one of the big keys to this business. Mm-hmm. It seems like everybody can figure out a way to scrape together some money to go out to buy a few deals, investors, some money in their bank account. But the biggest problem, and everyone has this, from seasoned investors to REITs, institutional buyers, everyone has this problem. It's sourcing deals, finding good properties to buy at reasonable prices. Right. So the number one way that people find deals is really not looking on the internet, because by the time you've seen it, a million other people have seen it. It's by getting to know some brokers. You don't need to know 30. Right. You just need to know, in any given market, 3 or 4 guys or gals that do deals. They are in the space that you want to be in. You want to buy RV parks, you got to find brokers that have closed deals, have listings, know what they're talking about. Unfortunately, the broker that sold you your house is probably most likely not going to be the person who's going to help you build a portfolio of cash flow properties. You're going to have to go out and you're going to have to look on the internet, LoopNet, CoStar, multiple listing service, whatever it is, to find deals for sale, and just start calling the brokers. It's a challenging job, but it's what you got to do. It's no different from what real estate brokers have to do to get started. They've got to call property owners. You've got to call brokers and say, hey, I'm looking to buy. And more importantly, you need to have a business plan. Nothing makes me laugh more than when I get a call from someone that says, what's your best deal you have for sale? I had mentioned this to Rod. I equate that to walking into a car dealership and saying, what's the best car you have?
Right.
You don't know where to start. Are you looking for an SUV? Are you looking for a minivan, a sedan, a sports car? They have no idea. I mean, and then you have to know what you want to buy. You have to have a business plan. Do you want to buy a triplex or a fourplex? Do you want to buy a 10-unit building? Do you want to buy a shopping center? And in what areas? What are you looking to do? Are you looking to buy a value-added deal that with low rents, that you're buying at a low cap rate, that you're going to come in and renovate the place, push rents and sell it or refi it? I mean, what's your business plan? If you can call a broker and explain what you're looking to do, they will take you seriously.
Yeah.
The buyers that we don't take seriously are the people that call us and they have no idea what they want to do. They're like, well, my next door neighbor bought an apartment building and I want to buy an apartment building too. What's the best deal you have? I mean, that's like, I don't even know what to even tell them. But
right.
Someone calls me and they say, I'm looking for 8 to 15 units. I want to be in this part of town. I want to buy this vintage, this kind of unit mix. It needs to have at least this amount of parking. And it's got to be at least a 4.5 cap. And I don't want to, pay more than $300,000 or $150,000 a unit. I'm like, wow, this guy or gal knows what they're looking for. And I can then drill down and find 2 or 3 things that might fit their criteria. And one of the last things I want to tell you is when brokers send you stuff, you need to give them feedback.
Yeah.
You need to say, hey, thank you for sending me this property. I like everything except, it needs a 50% down payment. And I just don't want to put that much money down. I need something that has a little bit better existing cash flow. Like, you need to give them some feedback on what you like and what you don't like about the property. There's nothing that's worse for a broker than a black hole, sending someone a bunch of deals and never hearing back from them again. Yeah. You're like, well, what happened to this person? I thought they seemed really serious on the phone, but then they didn't even look at it. Like, okay, and then they don't take you seriously. There's not that many buyers out there that follow up with brokers, and those brokers will remember those buyers and they will take them seriously. If a good deal comes across my desk, there's thousands of people I could send it to. Right. But there's 2 or 3 people I'll remember, Bob, Jane, and Michael would love this type of a deal. I'm going to send it to them. And those 3 people get everything that comes across my desk that fits their certain criteria. You want to make that short list. Gotcha. Yeah, I want to circle back because you jumped ahead to something I want to drill down on as well. So, guys, and that's one of the first things we teach in my boot camp is creating your investment criteria and coming up with that business plan like Brent just described, because you can't be all things to all people and you won't be taken seriously, not just with brokers, with investors or anyone else. You've got to know what it is you want. You can't shoot with a shotgun. Sorry about the analogy. You've got to shoot with a rifle. And so that's super important. And one of the first things you should do before you even pick up the phone and start calling brokers. Now, you talked about follow-up. Once someone sends you a deal, not only do they need to respond, but you need, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you need to see that they've actually evaluated that deal. Maybe normalize the expenses, run the numbers, and give you a credible response, not just, hey, I don't want it, that you've actually taken the time out of a respect thing to really look at it. Is that an accurate statement as well? It could be something as simple as, thank you, I looked at the property, I don't like the neighborhood, at least at this price. Yeah. Or I don't like the unit mix. I need more 2 bedrooms and studios. Or it could be as detailed as I put it in my model and here's the issue with the property. It's the rents are at market. There's no upside. I think there might actually be downside in it. You need to give them some sort of feedback. Yeah. But it could be as simple as the building itself or the neighborhood itself. Or it could be as detailed as the deal just doesn't work based on my investment criteria when I put it in my model. The key is the response. Obviously. Some sort of feedback. Okay. And this is somebody who's been doing this for 20 years. So listen up. So is there anything, besides that feedback when you send a deal, is there anything that changes your opinion in a positive way about a prospective buyer, maybe that hasn't bought from you yet even?
in their communication or in anything that they do? Anything come to mind with that question?
I mean, there's a million things. I mean, one
Okay.
of them is just when people call and just say, I like this deal. The seller wants 2 million. I'd be a buyer for it at 1.8.
Right.
Put an offer in at 1.7 and see what happens. I mean, there's nothing bad ever comes from asking a broker to write an offer that's less than what we think we can get it for.
Okay.
It takes a broker 5 minutes. They put an
Right.
offer together, they send it to you, and they'll remember, like, hey, this guy or gal actually like had me write an offer. They actually stepped up and did something. Now the deal might not go anywhere, and the seller might not respond, or they might not, they might give you a counter that's just so ridiculous that you don't do anything. But at least you showed that broker that you're willing to step up and make a move, not just look at a million deals. There's nothing worse than saying somebody 30, 40 properties and them never even writing an offer on something. They will eventually forget about you or just say this guy's or gal's a waste of time. Their criteria is just so ridiculous. And that's the next thing. Like, you've got to have reasonable expectations.
Right.
If you're trying to buy an apartment building at 200,000 per unit in a market that's everything's 300,000 a unit, you're probably not going to get too far.
Right.
If you're trying to buy a deal at a, 12 times gross in an area that everything's 15, you're probably not going to get anywhere either. Like, you need to have expectations that are in line with the market. Once the broker realizes that you're serious, you follow up, and your expectations are reasonable, they're going to fall in love with you, and they're going to be calling you all the time and showing you deals.
Well, that's my next question. How often should someone that's serious about this business, not just trying to learn the business, but serious, wants to find a deal, is taking the time to learn how to evaluate a deal, how often should they follow up with a broker?
Well, it depends on your response from that broker. If this, for instance, I love to buy apartment buildings for myself.
Right.
And as brokers, I call, and every time I call them, they've got 2 or 3 new things. And it's not all their listings, but they're deals that they are out there or they heard about. And I call them and they're like, well, I have this deal. What about this? Let me send you a few things. Those people, I'll call them once a week.
Right.
And then you could just follow up. Hey, I drove that property. I like it, but the guy wants $2 million. That's a crazy price. And then you might say, well, while you're in that neighborhood, why don't you go drive this other building? There's other brokers you call and they never have anything. So don't call them as often.
Right.
You'll kind of get a sense for it. I hate to say it's kind of like dating. Like, you kind of find out like where someone's rhythm is, and they're like, okay, I don't want to call this guy or gal too often. They're getting annoyed. Or some people, every time you call them, they've got 20 deals. So you need to be calling them once a week.
Okay. So you get a feel for it. Got it. Love it. Okay. Is there anything else that you look for besides having a business plan in a prospective buyer? Anything come to mind when I ask that question?
Well,
what about is there anything you do to gauge their ability to actually close? Because obviously you don't get paid unless they close, and you look like a horse's ass and can lose, relationships with sellers if they don't close. So, give me a feel for how you might test somebody's ability to actually close.
Yeah. Do they have money to buy a deal?
Right.
I mean, it's the obvious thing. And it's sometimes a little sensitive to ask. Like, someone says, write an offer for me in this property. And you're like, okay, well, do you want to put a loan in the offer? What's your down payment going to be? They're like, well, I'm going to have to work on that. It's like, like, what are we doing here? Like,
right.
What, you don't have any money in the bank? I mean, like, that's one of the first things you got to figure out, Rod, is I'm sure you tell people your boot camp, like, step one, figuring out whether or not
you need to be building relationships with investors the same time you're out there looking for deals, and okay. And, I get people that call me and say, hey, this broker asked for a proof of funds. And what that instantly tells me is that broker recognizes that they're a newbie, because maybe not, but that's certainly one piece, because, a lot of people raise the equity for their deals. Like, we raised 16 million in 5 days a few weeks ago. And so, you need to be able to have that conversation. And I don't know, please give me feedback here.
Yes. I mean, especially if you can't show that you've bought anything. If you're a random brand new buyer and you show up, hey, looking to buy apartments, looking to buy retail, looking to buy whatever, write an offer for me. The broker is probably going to say, for their own good and for the good of the seller, you have proof of funds. How are you going to finance this deal? You going to get a loan? What's your proof of source of funds? Can you verify that? I mean, it's also in most purchase agreements that, the buyer is going to provide documentation of their ability to come up with a down payment within a few days. It's good just to show that immediately. I mean, just
Got it.
get a bank statement, something together. If you're syndicating the deal and you're putting everything together, then this is probably not your first deal. And then you can show them, hey, these 2 deals we just did, I have investors, we put them all together. That at least is a credible story. And you can show, a case study of another deal that you did and just explain, in the first 2 weeks, I'm going to go raise all the money. And, I can show you the proof of funds within 2 weeks of the due diligence that we're ready to go and waive contingencies and we have the funds. That's also a credible story, and people are going to, at least should understand that. Sure. But if it's a beauty contest and there's 20 offers on a deal, the person who can show that they have 100% of the money of the purchase price in the bank is the one who's most likely going to win that property.
Sure. Regardless of the price almost. Yeah.
I mean, when you have someone who shows up and says, I have no money, I'm going to raise it, and you have other guys or gals that have the money in the bank, that puts you at a disadvantage.
Yeah. Tough to compete with that. Okay. Do you have any sort of because I've heard about screening processes that some brokers will put, prospective buyers through. Anything come to mind with that comment? Any way that you kind of test the waters, see if somebody's completely wasting your time?
You can usually find out in the first 30 seconds just by asking them what location they want to be in, unit mix, parking. When you're asking people questions and they don't really know how to answer them, they're like, well, I guess I could handle studios and 1s, but I'd really like 2s, but I don't know. I never thought about it. Then you kind of know, like, this person hasn't even thought this through. This is going to be a very long, protracted thing, and they're probably never going to do a deal. Yeah. They're just going to be calling you, find me something. And they're also, and this is something very important, Rod. Okay. Those kind of people don't know a good deal from a bad deal. Right. The most amazing deal could be dropped on their desk, and they're going to be like, I don't know. It's like if someone showed me an awesome apartment building in Texas in the middle of nowhere. I wouldn't be able to look at it and determine whether it's a good deal or not. But someone who owns a building in that neighborhood is going to gobble it up in a second if it's a halfway decent deal. Right. So when someone calls me and I can gauge through the conversation that they haven't quite yet figured out a good deal from a bad deal, it's going to be an issue getting them across the finish line. Whereas other people, and this, as we just discussed, Ron, this is definitely still a seller's market, as crazy as the COVID thing is. I mean, people just are flush with capital. They want to buy, they want to place funds. They're not comfortable keeping all their money in the bank. So it's going to be competitive. So also, make sure that you're buying a deal that you're comfortable with in the size range. If it's your first deal and you're calling a broker and it's a very, very pricey deal, maybe pull back a little bit and look for something maybe a little bit smaller for your first property. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things we suggest people do is they align with someone that's done it for their first couple of deals. They find somebody who's got a few hundred or 1,000 doors and help them find the deal and, participate in the GP and just get it done. Maybe raise a little equity and then, they can utilize that resume, as it were, to have credibility with someone like you and and know that somebody with some experience is involved in the deal and maybe has the liquidity to show a piece of that. I don't know, does that make sense as well?
Most people, I got started that way when I was at Sperry Van Ness back when I was in my 20s. They had a division that was buying office buildings and shopping centers, and I was just rolling commissions straight into those deals. And that was how I kind of got my foot into investing. Mm-hmm. And at a certain point, I realized, like, I could do this on my own. Like, I know the banks, I know the property management companies, I know how to find deals. Right. So maybe I should just start doing my own. But it was, 8 years of me being in the business until I worked up that level of confidence. Right. And I look back, and that was one of the biggest mistakes I made, was waiting so long.
Yeah. That's always a question I ask. If you could tell your younger self, what would you do differently? I always ask the question because I want everyone to hear it time and time again. Bigger, faster, right?
Well, the other thing too is, like, I was too picky. I was looking for that colossal home run. And that's one of the biggest things. People are like, what's your best piece of advice? I tell people, like, you become, the book I wrote, $1 billion portfolio. It's about people that went out, pretty much, I'm going to guess most is very typical of your average listener. Someone who didn't start out in real estate, but wants to get started. And the book I wrote is about all these clients of mine that started with nothing, and now they have these $1 billion portfolios. And most of them tell me that they got to where they are by buying singles and doubles. They're not trying to find a colossal home run, a deal that's worth 300 a unit, and the broker and the seller screw up and sell it to you at 200,000 a unit.
Right.
You're buying a deal 200,000 a unit that's worth 200,000 a unit, but they feel they can add value to it. So one of the biggest mistakes that I made and most people make is just having a criteria that's just unrealistic. They're trying to buy, like I said, 200,000 per unit in a 300,000 per unit area. You're never going to get your goals accomplished. But if you're buying an area where prices are appreciating, rents are growing, you're going to do fine over the long term just buying okay deals. You don't have to look for the colossal home runs I keep mentioning.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. No, that makes sense.
Get one, but
the only caveat I would say is you still want to be conservative. You still don't want too much debt. You want to make sure you've got sufficient operating reserves. You want to make sure you stress test the deal, that you can sustain, a pullback and so on and so forth.
For sure, 100%. Right. It's got to be a sustainable deal with you feeling comfortable of your ability to long-term grow the rents, grow the value, et cetera.
And sustain some hits if they pop up,
Correct. Yeah. Yes. Okay. And you've got to have reserves for the bad times, which come up more often than not.
Now, okay, you went there, so I'm gonna ask the next obvious question. What are your thoughts? Because you've been doing it for 20 years, so you've gone through some cycles, as I have, and that's the operative word in this business, is it goes through cycles. So, but I will tell you, the downturns are probably the best opportunities known to man. Of course, I was licking my wounds in 08 because I got crushed, but that's when the most money is made. Any thoughts about the future? I know the rates are ridiculous right now. Any thoughts about what could be coming?
So this is such a strange market we're in, because all indications should be that the market should be crushed. But look at the stock market, look at the real estate market. There is one driving factor that separates 2020 from 2009. It's liquidity. In 2009, almost everyone that you talked to had no money in the bank. Yeah. And the people that did, they didn't want to spend it. 2020, almost every investor I deal with is flush with cash, burning a hole in their pocket, and they want to spend it. That is the big difference. Prices can never drop when there's so much demand for product. Yeah. People want to buy. And that is why this market has not gone down, why it's going to stay where it is. If interest rates go up, that's going to be a game changer, but I don't think that they are. So the people that say, I'm going to wait till prices drop, well, they're never going to buy then, because prices are not going to drop. It's going to be some other thing that makes prices drop in another 10 years. It would have already happened by now. So I don't know if that quite answers your question, Rod.
Well, it's all of this is opinion, and I have, I don't know. Part of me thinks we are going to have a contraction at some point here in the next 3 years. But
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you look at it, and like you just described, it sure doesn't feel like it. It's kind of hard to figure out how it could happen, but I don't know, COVID didn't seem to derail anything to speak of. Of course, put a lot of small businesses out of business. I mean, there's some real horrific stories there, but as it relates to multifamily, so maybe some of the smaller ones in the blue states are getting killed, New York and so on and so forth. But yeah, interesting. So circling back to broker relationships, what have you seen someone do before they've bought their first deal from you that made you think, okay, I'm impressed. I'm definitely going to send this person some deals. Anything to add to what we've already discussed?
Well, like I mentioned, it's when you start getting answers to questions that you ask, and you can tell that this person is really thinking about this. They've developed a business plan. Mm-hmm. They know how they're going to finance it. They know how they're going to manage it. They know exactly what they're looking for in a deal. Yeah. I could go back to that car analogy as well. When someone just shows up and they're like, we're looking for a car, and they have no idea. The salesman's like, where do I start? SUVs or minivans? Right. They have no idea. But when you show up, and you call a broker, you tell them what you're looking for, they meet you at the property, and you get the sense that they're new to the business, but they know exactly what they want to do. Then you're like, okay. And a lot of brokers are going to be excited about that because they're like, this person might just be like, come my
For
buyer.
real.
Like,
Yeah,
and
for real.
like they might become loyal to me and only buy through me and only sell through me. Everyone's looking to meet, every broker is looking to meet that next guy or gal that's going to go out and buy a dozen deals. And not to mention the fact you're looking for a buyer who's going to be loyal. You sell them a great deal, they're going to come back a year or 2 or 3 years later and let you sell it for them. They're going to give you the listing back.
Yeah.
Those buyers, they do amazingly well because the brokers know, hey, this is a long-term pipeline. I'm going to sell them a great deal. In a couple of years, they're going to give it back to me. I'm going to sell it for them. I'm going to find them another deal to buy as an up leg. This is just going to keep rolling. And it's just like a broker's dream.
Nice. So, one of the things that comes up from time to time is you hear about buyers asking brokers to share their commission to offset something that happened. Can you speak to that?
We get that request from time to time, and typically that's the last time I'm going to work with that buyer. I mean, there's so many people out there that we can sell a deal to. If a good deal comes up, I'm going to call a buyer who I know is never going to ask for money. They're never going to ask me to chip in on the commission. And more importantly, just as equally importantly, I know when they go to sell the property, they're going to call me and give it back to me.
Right.
Nothing's worse than selling somebody a building for, say, $1 million. And 2 years later, the guy doesn't give you the listing and he doesn't even talk to you. And you see it with a competitor at twice what you sold to him. And you're just pulling your hair out being like, what did I do wrong? I just made this guy or gal a bunch of money and they won't give me the time of day. You're never going to show that guy or gal a deal again. You're going to give it to a loyal client. So this is a tough business. Brokers are not making the money that they used to. And just understand that for you to get that call, you can't get in their pocket.
I know a story. I've got a buddy in my mastermind. I host a mastermind. It's about 12 billion in assets in there. And his name's Glenn. And I remember he told a story. He had a chiller go out on one of these assets he had under contract. It was $100,000 hit pre-closing. And he could have gone to the broker to ask for a little help with it, and he didn't. He ate it, and because he valued that broker relationship so much. I was talking to another person in my boardroom, Venkat, that built that relationship with the broker, and the guy sold him 2,000 doors in Dallas or Houston. I forgot what city he's in, but the point is, you've got to value those relationships. I feel like there was something else we were going to talk about.
You're so right. This is a relationship business.
Right.
And if you're going to achieve that, what I wrote in the book, that $1 billion portfolio, you've got to establish that pipeline with brokers. You've got to treat brokers as an asset. You can't look at a broker as just a salesman at Walmart. This is someone who's going to be finding you deals to buy.
It's a partnership. It's a freaking partnership.
Yeah.
There's no other way to describe it. And that's how you have to treat, because a broker can make you freaking wealthy. Hello. So, okay. Let me ask you this question, because a lot of buyers, I don't know, a lot of buyers come from out of state to California, but certainly the other way around is big. But let me ask you a question. Do you feel like if someone starts a relationship, or maybe they're in San Francisco and they start the relationship with you over the phone, do you feel like the relationship changes when they come visit and actually go tour a property with you?
There are several groups that I've worked with and sold deals to who were from the Bay Area. Right. They called me, but I quickly found out who they were and that they owned a bunch of buildings up there. So, I've screened them and knew they were real.
Okay.
And then they wrote offers on properties. They'd fly down. They'd go see the building. We do tours. Like, you take those people seriously. Someone who's going to fly all the way from San Francisco down to LA to see a marginal apartment building, they must be pretty serious, right? It's not a 5-minute drive from their house on a Sunday afternoon. I mean, it takes effort for somebody to make that deal.
Yeah, and I've heard this from from other brokers and from investors that once they actually they see that the person is real, they see that that they've got it, they sense they've got integrity, they see their passion, and they articulate with more clarity what they're looking for and how they're able to accomplish the closing if they do the deal, maybe position that. that things really change, that they're, that the relationship is enhanced.
It's good to put a face to a name. It's good to
Yeah.
actually meet somebody, connect with them. And
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many, there's so many people I've talked to for 10, 15 years. And like, I haven't met the people, and all of a sudden
No
I
kidding.
meet them and they're like, wow, I thought, this is great. We've talked so long and I finally meet you. And it's like, these people like feel like, I get the sense that they feel like we've known each other like really well for a long period of time. So yes, it's always great to meet people in person. With COVID, obviously it's been challenging,
Right.
but people are adapting, and it's, it is what it is, but it's always good to establish a real relationship with somebody, not just telephone and emails. And by the way, the worst thing you can do to try to establish a relationship with a broker is through email.
Right.
I get so many emails from people. Hi, I like your deal. Please send me some info. And you never hear from them again.
Right.
They don't give you a phone number. They won't call you. I don't take those people seriously. Like people that call me or want me to call them, I take them seriously. Why?
Okay.
Because they are letting me know that they want to establish a relationship. The people that hide behind a computer, I don't know how they get business done that way.
Is there a way that a prospective buyer can help you as a broker?
Yeah, besides just the obvious buying deals and closing.
Right. Besides that, right.
Sure. Oftentimes I have buyers tell me about other properties that they looked at, or they give me some feedback. I made an offer on this deal and there was 20 offers on it. And then I'm like, just market knowledge, because, as great as I think I might be, there's a lot of stuff going on in the market that is not possible for me to be aware of.
Right.
So when you find out from somebody that they walked the property and there was 20 other buyers there, you start thinking, was that deal underpriced, or what's going on? Why are so many people interested in that building? And that helps you gather more knowledge about what's going on in the market. And the more knowledge you have, the more effective you're going to be as a real estate professional.
What about actually going and touring your listings and allowing the seller to see that things are happening and you're active and things are happening? Is that a dynamic that comes into play at all?
Yeah, we were launching actually a very large listing today, and more than likely is going to be a ton of requests for property tours. And as much as it's kind of a burden to get everyone through the buildings and do it, it's a great way for us to meet buyers. It's a great way for us to know what people like, and just it's an important thing to do, to show a seller we brought 5 people out to the building today, give the seller feedback. Everyone was commenting that they like the units, but
this and this. Yeah.
It's the sellers. It's good for the sellers to know what buyers are thinking as well, because every seller thinks that their building's great, the best building ever, and that people should pay more than what it's worth. And it's, the sellers oftentimes need that feedback, especially when we're in a market like we are now. Right. Prices are just so astronomically high. And in California, we've got major issues with rent collection. Rents have dropped.
Right. Rent control as well. Yes.
Rent control, which is not going away. We now have statewide rent control here. The entire state is rent controlled, anything 15 years or older. But we just have economic issues. I mean, I have a 100-unit building for sale right now. We have, not joking, we have 15% vacancy, and we have 20% of the tenants not paying rent. Wow. So of 100 units, there's 65 paying, 35 are vacant, or they're occupied and the tenants are not paying rent.
Wow.
Hard to sell that deal, hard to get a loan on it. And we've got a guy in escrow on it, but he's a seasoned veteran. Got to find
some bridge debt, something. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's struggling with it, and the seller's trying to work with him and make that happen. But these are some real issues. But despite all those issues, we're looking at prices are not dissimilar from where we were pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. Right. So it really shows you that we're in a really dynamic market, despite all the flaws of what's going on.
It's a resilient market is really what we're seeing, right?
It's just unbelievable. Resilient is an understatement when you consider all. I mean, a year ago, prices were pretty much where they are now. You didn't have to worry about vacancies or my tenants going to pay rent. And interest rates weren't that much higher then, and leverage was way better. So now you've got all these issues, these headwinds, but people still want to buy. It's incredible. Yeah. But apartment buildings seem to be like the safe place to go if people want to buy just to for that reason.
Well, I mean, I will tell you, I was reading an article by, oh gosh, I forgot the source now, but it was a real credible source. So you knew it was real, that apartments rebounded within 3 years of the '08 crash and to the rent levels that they were in the pre-crash. I mean, that's how resilient multifamily is. And, don't get me started about retail or office. They're both sucking wind right now. But worse than what you're describing with that 100-unit asset, and so, I've got guys that own retail centers that say there's 75% of their tenants are in trouble. So
yeah, no one's paying.
Yeah. Well, listen, you've added tremendous value today, Brent. Guys, his book is $1 Billion Portfolio, and he talks about some of these people that he's worked with that have built $1 billion worth of assets under management, and success stories. And so I'm sure, I have not read it. I can't tell you it's awesome. I imagine that it is, but I haven't read it. So, but I will tell you that just even if you get one fantastic tip from it, I'm sure there's more than one. I'm sure it's worth getting. So again, $1 Billion Portfolio, Brent. Thanks for being on the show, brother. It's a pleasure to meet you. And, I know that you definitely added value today, my friend.
Thank you, Rod. It was a pleasure. I hope your fans enjoyed it. And it was great to be here today.
Thank you, bud. Take care.
Rod, I know a lot of our listeners are wanting to take their multifamily investing business to the next level. Now, I know you've been hard at work helping our Warrior students do just that using our ACT methodology, which is awareness, close, and transform. Can you explain to the listeners how they can get our help?
You bet. Guys, we've been going nonstop for 3 years, building an amazing community of like-minded people. And our coaching students, which we call our Warriors, have had extraordinary results. They've purchased thousands and thousands of units. And last year, we did over 1,000 units with our students. And we're looking to grow this group and take it to the next level. We're looking for people who want to follow a proven framework that's really step by step, and then leverage our systems and network to raise equity, to find and close deals, and to build partnerships nationwide. Now, our Warrior community is finding success in any market cycle. So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become more of our incredible network and take advantage of the incredible opportunities that are coming very soon, apply to work with us at mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 41411. That's mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 41411.